بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. So continuing along with the book Umdat al-Fiqh by Imam al-Muwaffiq ibn Qudama rahimahullah ta'ala. Last week we started the introduction of the book and we talked a little about the Imam's life. He started off with praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who deserves all praise, a praise that is befitting to His Majesty and greater, or like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is upon His creation, and He bear witness that there is nobody worthy of worship except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We talked about the requirements of the Shahada, the 7 requirements of La ilaha illallah, and then he sent his, he bear witness to the prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We talked about the 7 rights of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and describing what the Sahaba upon his, he sent the blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's family and the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, and we described each of those as well. And now he continues, he says, Amma ba'ad. Amma ba'ad is a way to do like a breaking point after your introduction to start the subject. Some scholars says it goes back, to the first one to use it was Dawood alayhi salam, when he says, وَشَدَّدْنَا مُلْكُهُ وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةِ وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. Some scholars in the tafsir you'll find فصل الخطاب, the breaking point of the speech, or the criteria of speech, or the introduction. They say that's amma ba'ad, and they say Dawood alayhi salam was the first one to use that, but that tafsir is not really authentic, and if you go look in the other tafsirs it explains it differently. It means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the gift of speech. But anyway, the authors, their sunan is to start with the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and saying the peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then they say amma ba'ad. And this, if you look in the Quran, Allah Azza wa Jal, He starts to the same way, like He starts with Alhamd, Surah Al-Fatiha, and then Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. He starts the introduction of the book. This is the book in which there is no doubt, right? So following that manhaj, after the Prophet ﷺ, after Khutbah al-Hajjah, he would say, Amma ba'd, right? So this is the sunan of the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following His way in how He organized the Quran, and then the way the Prophet ﷺ used to give his speeches. So the authors, they try to follow this manhaj. Now he's going into what this book is about. He says, فَهَذَا كِتَابٌ فِي الْفِقْهِ. This is a book in fiqh. Kitab comes from the word kataba, which usually literally means to gather, or jam'a, right? To put together, like the words, the letters, haruf, are put together to make words. They're, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent this book down, the book, kitab. He's talking about here, this book here is in fiqh. And fiqh is علم بأحكام الشرعية العملية المستنبطة من أدلتها التفصيلية. So fiqh is the knowledge of the rulings of the Sharia, the practical rulings, the rulings that you can act upon. The scholars say amaliya as opposed to i'tiqadiyya, right? Because in i'tiqad, aqidah, there's no playing around or ijtihad, right? But in fiqh, in the Sharia, the amaliya portion, the acting portion, there's a permissibility of having ikhtilaf, right? Because a lot of ijtihadi issues. Like the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when the Prophet ﷺ told them, none of you should pray until they get to Bani Qurayza, right? Some Sahaba interpreted it as meaning that Prophet ﷺ was saying that you should pray, or you should rush to get there, but you should still pray on time, right? And the other Sahaba, they said, no, that means we should not pray until we literally get there, and then we can pray, right? So they had a difference of opinion, and none of them blamed each other for it. So this shows in fiqh there's a allowance or some type of permissibility of ikhtilaf, whereas in aqidah it's different. There's no ijtihad, there's no ikhtilaf. So that's why the scholars say al-amaliyya al-mustanbita min adillatiha at-tafsiliyya, that which is derived from the proofs, or the sufficient proofs, meaning the Quran and the Sunnah, right? The ahkam of the Sharia is taken from the Kitab wa Sunnah. And fiqh, the science we're studying here, is translated usually as jurisprudence. It shows us the way to make ibadat and the mu'amalat. So how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala correctly in terms of salat and siyam and hajj, and zakat, these type of things. And al-mu'amalat, so having marriage contracts or business contracts, etc. Right? This is what fiqh covers. And the sciences of fiqh are many, but the main ones is like what we're talking and we're studying about here, the jurisprudence. Also, they have usul al-fiqh, which is like basically the foundation or the principles of fiqh, right? So what is wajib, for example? What is mustahab? What is mubah? What is makruh? What is muharram? That's usul al-fiqh. It kind of shows you like the hows of fiqh. So wajib, for example, if you do it, you get rewarded for it, and if you don't do it, you may get punished for it, right? And mustahab, if you do it, you get rewarded for it. If you don't do it, there's no punishment for it. Mubah, it's kind of equal. There's no punishment or reward unless you have intention for it. Makruh, it's disliked. If you leave it, you get rewarded for it. If you do it, you don't get a sin, but it's not liked. And muharram, if you do it, you get a sin for it. It's haram, or you can get punishment for it. And if you leave it with the intention, you can get rewarded for it. Right? So those are the ahkam of usul al-fiqh. And there's many other issues of usul al-fiqh, but I'm just giving you the most, popular things that we deal with on a daily basis. Qawaid al-fiqhiyya, those are kind of like the maxims of fiqh. So the scholars, they went through all the Quran and all the ahadith, right? And they gathered certain principles and maxims of fiqh. For example, al-umur bi maqasidiha. All your actions are by intention, right? Al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shak. Certainty is not removed with doubt. Ad-darar yuzal. Harm is removed. Al-urfu muhakkama. Like the custom is considered, the customs of the people, right? These are all considered qawaid al-fiqhiyya, they're maxims. And the other science is maqasid al-sharia, or the intention or the purpose of the sharia, and that is to protect, the five main things, which is your deen, your life, your wealth, your progeny, and your honor, right? And your aql. Those are the five things. So your deen, your mind, your religion, your mind, your life, your wealth, and your progeny or your honor, like meaning your offspring. So the deen, that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He made shirk forbidden, right? Your aql, that's why khamr is forbidden. Your mind. Your life, that's why murder is forbidden. Your wealth, theft is forbidden. Your honor, your progeny, your offspring, that's why zina, adultery, or fornication is forbidden, right? That's maqasid al-sharia. So those are just some of the ulum that come together with the sharia, with the fiqh. He goes on to say, اختصرته حسب الإمكان, that he summarized it, this book that we're talking about here, حسب الإمكان, basically like he's saying, as best as I could, right? And this is from the humbleness of the ulama. He's one of the greatest scholars in the history of the ummah, in hadith and fiqh, and usul al-fiqh, and Arabic and tafsir, all the sciences he's written in, mashallah. And yet he says, I summarized it, بِحَسَبِ الْإِمْكَان, in the best to my ability, to make himself humble, and also to be free from saying that I am, doing the best job, right? Nowadays, many people will write their book as if they are the hujjah of the ummah, and say like, al-qawl al-mufid, or al-qawl al-baligh, or like the final statement, the final answer, right? But this imam, in all his knowledge and his greatness in writing and everything, he humbled himself and he said, bihasab al-imkan, so therefore he's not showing off. And also, in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't make a false statement, right? He didn't say, I summarized everything you need in fiqh, and this is the final statement, and everything I say is correct. No, I did the best I could, and this is what I came up with, right? So he's showing the humbleness. واختصرت فيه على قول واحد ليكون أمدة لقارئه. And I basically summarized it to one statement so that it can be a foundation for its reader, right? Umdat, which he named the book after, is a foundation or the reliable source. So the Imam, he put this book, what we're studying right now, Umdat al-Fiqh, into one statement, one qawl, right? In the madhab of Imam Ahmed, you have what's called riwayah and qawl, right? You don't have riwayah directly upon Imam Ahmed because he never wrote down his madhab, right? So you have like aqwal, some of the statements of his students. They wrote down his, fatawa and his answers to certain questions. It's different from Imam Malik, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Shafi. They had written down the madhab during their lifetime, right? Imam Ahmed, he just wrote down the um, hadith, basically. You have Musnad Imam Ahmed, which is a great collection, about 30,000 hadith that he collected. And he summarized it to one statement, one qawl. Um, Basically, he's taking like all his studies of fiqh and putting down the most reliable source or reliable statement, right? And يكون عمدة لقارئه, so that it will be easy or be a foundation for the reader. And like we said last week, I think briefly, that in the manhaj of the ulama, they start with a small matan in fiqh, like especially specifically in fiqh and most of the different ulum, but we're talking about fiqh right now. So they start with a small matan that has like one statement, right? And then after that they go on to explain it in a sharh, right, to make like more explanation of that matan. And then there's al-hashiyah, which is like commentary on the sharh, right? So it gets like little to medium to large, right? So he wrote, to make it easy for the students, he actually wrote like a whole curriculum. He starts with this as like for the beginning level of fiqh, Umdat al-Fiqh, and then he goes to al-Muqni', which is about like 2 volumes, a little bit more expansive in the madhab itself. And then al-Kafi, it's like even larger and more statements of the madhab, and maybe differences of opinions. And then he goes al-Mughni. Al-Mughni was a sharh of Mukhtasar al-Kharaqi, but he wrote it into about 15 volumes, right? And that's the difference of the different madhab and what's the strongest opinion. So he took all those 15 volumes and he took what he thought was the strongest opinion and put it for you in one statement, right? So you can be a foundation for you. فَلَا يَلْتَبِسْ الصَّوَابْ عَلَيْهِ بِاخْتِلَافِ الْوُجُوهِ وَالرِّوَايَاتِ. So you don't get confused by the different narrations and the different statements from the madhab itself and from the different madhab, right? If you're starting out as a student of knowledge, and I start and I say like, this statement about tahara, for example, and I say these are the shurut, but in this madhab there's difference of opinions. These scholars, they say this about the shurut, these scholars, or the arkan, these scholars say this about the arkan, these say this about the sunnah, these say this about the sunnah, and then in madhab Maliki is this, and madhab Abu Hanifa is this, and Imam madhab Shafi is this. That's going to be kind of confusing for the student, for a beginning student, right? So he wrote this book mukhtasaran, like summarized, so it won't be confusing for anybody. It'll be simple. Like this is the basic statement, the summarized version. This is what he thinks is the best opinion in his, scholarship. So you can learn it and master it, and then you can go and start building upon that and getting more and more knowledge. As-sawab, like the scholars also in the writing of fiqh, his choice of what is best. He implies that this is his choice of like what is strongest or what is the correct opinion, for example, from his research or the madhab. And the scholars of the past used to say قولي صواب يحتمل الخطأ وقول غيري خطأ يحتمل الصواب, that my statement is correct but I could be wrong, and the statement of my opponent or somebody else I believe is incorrect but it could be right. So they don't have like saying 100% I'm right, if you don't follow me then you're off the manhaj or you're wrong or whatever. No, there's kind of like a understanding and a respect for the scholars amongst each other. سألني بعض إخواني تلخيصه ليقرب على المتعلمين ويسهل حفظه على الطالبين. He said some of my brothers asked me to summarize it, that it can be easy for those that are learning, the students, and it can be easy for them to memorize, right? And this is also the minhaj of the ulama. Many of the ulama of the past would not write something unless their students came to them and asked them. And this is out of humbleness, and fear from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because anytime you write something, you've put in your statement out for people to make judgment upon, and it's also going to last until the day of judgment, right? If you print something and you spread something and you write something in the deen, khalas, you can't really take it back. It's going to spread regardless. Nowadays we have this social media and Facebook, and many people don't realize, once you put a post or if you do something online or a picture or a statement, it's almost khalas, you can't get it back anymore. You can't really delete it. Somebody can copy it and spread it, and it can go to millions of people, right? So if you're saying something good and beneficial and getting blessings, inshallah, that's great rewards for you. But if say you're saying something bad, or you're putting something filthy, or if you're backbiting somebody, or you know, doing something like this, then you've written it, you can't take it back, right? It's spread. It could go to thousands and thousands of people. On the day of judgment, they will be a witness against you, right? So be very careful when you write something. So anyways, the scholars of the past, many of them, when you look in their books, some of the greatest works of fiqh and hadith and different sciences, they won't write it unless somebody asks them to do so, or if there's a need for it, right? So always look and see what the need is of your community before you write something, because you have to be extra careful that you don't want to, spread something wrong or do something unnecessary, and that you have the ability and the wherewithal to do it, first of all. So he said to make it easy for the students or the teachers as well, and also to make it easy to memorize. In the ilm, there's two main components to ilm: al-fahm and al-hifth. Basically understanding and memorizing. Some people, they can understand, but they don't have a good memory. Some people, they have a good memory, but they don't understand. Right? A strong student, a good student will have them both. A good teacher will have them both. Because if you understand, but you can't explain, you can't come up with the proofs, it's not as good. Right? You need to have understanding and the ability to recall and to give the proofs. What are the ayat? What are the ahadith? So the two main components of ilm is fahm and hifth. فأجبته إلى ذلك, I answered them in this, meaning he answered the request to write the book. معتمدا على الله سبحانه في إخلاص القصد لوجهه الكريم, depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with sincerity of intention, ikhlas, لوجهه الكريم, for his honorable countenance, for the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he's depending on Allah, because any affair that you want to do in life, if you don't depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you depend on yourself, you depend upon the khalq, the creation, it's bound to disappoint you, or you're bound to fail. But if you always make your niyyah for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you depend upon Him first and foremost, no matter what, you will be successful. Right? Niyyah, the ikhlas of niyyah is the most important thing. I'm learning for the sake of Allah, to lift the ignorance from myself so I can worship Allah better. Not so I can look down upon people, not so that I can prove people wrong, not so that I can show off that I'm knowledgeable or I'm a scholar or whatever. No, it's so that I can worship Allah correctly. Right? Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah ta'ala, one of the great imams, he said, he had his own madhab basically. It just didn't spread because he didn't have the students to carry it forward. And he was a great scholar of hadith. He was considered like a mountain in the ilm of hadith. But he said that he would constantly be, checking his intention, right? Hard, always trying to be sincere in his intention, whatever he does. And many times, he would see him in the halaqat, he would just go sit down quietly on the outskirts without showing off at all. He was probably the most knowledgeable person in all the area, but just to humble himself, he would go sit in the halaqat and sit down as if he is a beginning student, right? Not wanting people to know who he was, just to humble himself for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? And there's many statements of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they used to accuse themselves of having hypocrisy because they would check their niyyah so much and so strongly, and they feared Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So it's very important when one, in any affair, in any ibadah, that you check your niyyah, that you're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the Imam, he reminds himself at the beginning of this book, I'm depending on Allah in writing it. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. And I want him to make my niyyah correct for his sake and his sake alone. وَالْمَعُونَ عَلَى الْوُصُولِ إِلَى رِضْوَانِهِ الْعَظِيمِ. So that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives to him the ikhlas, that he worships Him, he writes this book sincerely for His sake, and He gives him the help that will allow him to reach Ridwanihi al-Azim. Ridwan Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the pleasure of Allah, the greatest pleasure of Allah. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَرِضْوَانُ مِنَ اللَّهِ أَكْبَرُ. That Ridwan, the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is akbar. It's the greatest, right? Greater than Jannah itself. If you can achieve the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's even greater than Jannah. to look at Allah, be able to look at Allah on the Day of Judgment, to be able to look at Allah in Jannah. That pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is greater than everything. Ridwanum min Allahi akbar. It's the greatest. So the Imam is saying that he's asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him the help and the aid and the encouragement that he can reach his pleasure, reach the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَهُوَ حَسْبُنَا وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. And Allah is sufficient for us and the best of caretakers. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sufficient for us in everything. Whether we want knowledge, whether we want rizq, whether we want, spouses, family, anything, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's sufficient for us. And He is the provider and He is the caretaker. Right? So always put your affairs in His hands first and foremost. The Imam, he's showing us in this introduction how to put everything back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how to depend upon Allah, right? How to realize Allah is sufficient for everything, for all our needs, all our cares, all our worries, Allah is sufficient. The tawfiq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's in this, writing this book is a gift from Allah, spreading knowledge is a gift from Allah, right? And he realizes that, and he realizes the trust that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put upon him. So he's asking Allah for His help and for His support and to be sufficient for him. وَوُدَعْتُهُ أَحَدِيث صَحِيحًا تَبَرُّكًا بِهَا وَاعْتِمَادًا عَلَيْهَا. And he said, this part basically the scholars say that he put the basis of the text is taken from ahadith. Sahiha, he says, right? So the hadith is ما يرويه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من قول وفعل أو تقريرا, right? And some scholars they add صفاته خلقيا أو خلقيا. So the hadith is basically the statement of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, his statements, his actions, or his implicit acceptances. And some scholars they add his characteristics, moral and physical characteristics. These are the ahadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said sahiha. Sahih here he means basically hasan or sahih, right? Acceptable ahadith. Because in the fiqh or the ahkam of the sharia, it's not permissible to use weak hadith, right? If you want to establish a ruling in the sharia, you need to base it upon authentic hadith. So he says ahaditha sahiha. Authentic hadith. Sahih hadith is the one that is narrated without any break in the chain of narration, and it's narrated by just, honorable, and proficiently memorizing narrators, right? And it's not shadh. It doesn't go against other ahadith. Tabarrukun biha, trying to attain the blessings from it, to get the blessings from the Prophet ﷺ's ahadith, right? The best adillah that you can use in trying to convince anybody or teach anybody is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Barakah originally means to have an increase in, right? وَجَعَلْنِي مُبَارَكًا أَيْنَمَا كُنْتُ, blessed wherever I am, right? Isa alayhi salam makes that statement. So the whole goal of a Muslim is to live a life that has barakah in it. So you look into all the means that you can attain barakah, right? Blessings in your life. The book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ are the best ways, obviously. Following them, reading them, understanding them, applying them. This is how you can get more barakah in your life. So he put these ahadith to get this barakah in this book. وَاتِّمَادًا عَلَيْهَا, and he depended upon it. وَجَعَلْتُهَا مِنَ الصِّحَاحِ لِأَسْتَغْنَى عَنْ نِسْبَتِهَا إِلَيْهَا. And most of it is taken from the Sahihain, Bukhari and Muslim, right? So that he won't have to tell you where he got it from, because most scholars they accept the ahadith of Bukhari and Muslim as being sahih, right? In general, the vast majority. So he tried to use for his book most of the ahadith taken from Bukhari and Muslim, so that you don't have to go and look for it if it's authentic or not, right? And this is the basic introduction of the Imam that we started with. Inshallah, next week we'll go into the book itself, and he starts with Kitab al-Tahara, obviously the book of purification. But like we said, most Imams, they start off with the introduction to show us, first and foremost, to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, send the blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and give you a brief introduction of what he's going to do in this book. And like we said, Ibn Qudam, we talked about his life last time, and this book in itself is considered, a very reliable source in the madhab al-Hanbali, and it's many different explanations for it you can find online. The one I sent out to the group, that's in a decent English translation for the Fiqh of Ibadat, the first half of the book. It would be easy if you don't know the Arabic language. That's a good explanation. And then there's many, if you want to ask me for the Arabic explanations, there are many different shuruh that are out there, mashallah. It's a book has barakah, it's been worked upon by many of the scholars, and like I said, it's a foundational text, if you want to study fiqh. He did it as a nathar. Nathar means it's like written out. You have in mukhtasarat, or the summarized mutun, you have either nathar or nadhm. Nathar is like written down without rhyming, right? And nadhm is poetry. They write the metan in a poetic form. Both have their pluses and minuses. The pluses of this is that the sentences are clear, and there's no basically ambiguous terminology. And the minuses is sometimes a little bit harder to memorize as opposed to the nadhm. The nadhm, the plus is that it's easy to memorize, obviously, but the minus is sometimes, because of poetic forms and the prose, they have to put in different words that might not be necessary, or they might have to wiggle with it a little bit, right? So both have its pluses and minuses, but this time we're studying this nathar because it's one of the most popular ones, and it's very simple, inshallah, in terms of understanding it. And I would try my best to explain it, to give a basic background in fiqh that we all need to know how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala correctly. If you guys have any questions, tafaddalu, inshallah.
Does it contain riba? What transactions would be considered riba?
Yeah, so it has basically all the abwab of fiqh, mukhtasara, starting from kitab al-tahara all the way through the ahkam or the ibadat, and then it goes into the mu'amalat, from marriage to business transactions to riba to farming transactions, all that stuff, mashallah.
What does manhaj mean?
Minhaj? Minhaj is like way. Yeah.
And what's the author's name?
Ibn Qudama. Muwafiq Ibn Qudama. And the book is called Umdat al-Fiqh.
So, sujood al-sahwi, can you go over that again? The general ruling. You went over it last time, and last week when I was praying, I kind of forgot.
Okay.
The different rulings and etc.
So we'll get to when we get to Kitab al-Salat, but briefly, the general ruling in sujood al-sahwi is if there is a decrease, requiring sujood al-sahwi, you do the 2 sujood before the taslim. And if there's an increase, if you added something to the salah extra that wasn't supposed to be part of it, then you do the sujood after the taslim. Right? And that's like I said, there's many differences of opinion, but that's just one of the easy ones to memorize or to understand.
And then I think at the beginning we were talking about, you said certainty removes doubt or shirk?
Al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shak means that certainty is not removed by doubt. So it's very important in fiqh especially. Like for example, say you're certain you made wudu, right? And the time for salat comes in. Then doubt comes to you, wait, did I make wudu or not? Did I break my wudu or not? So now you have something you're certain of, that you made the wudu, and then you have something that you're doubtful of, did I break it or not? Right? So certainty cannot be removed with this doubt. It has to be certainty of equal level to remove certainty. Right? So you have to be 100% sure, or greater certainty than this one that you broke your wudu, in order for you to go and have to make wudu again. Right? But if you're certain you made wudu and you're not certain you broke it, you stay upon what you're certain. Right? In ahkam of zawaj, if a person, he's married to somebody, he knows this is my wife, right? And he had doubt, did I divorce her or not? Maybe he got very angry one night and he said it, or he's not sure, or he was, sleepwalking, or he was just in a state that not 100%, and he thought man, did I divorce my wife or not? Right? here, it's actually in fiqh, so it's like it could happen. So they say, what are you sure of? You're sure that you're married, but you're not sure you have the divorce. So therefore, that you stay upon what you're sure of, the marriage, right? And it goes. There's many abwab that it applies to. So these qawaid, they're like 5 main qawaid. There's others, but those are the 5 main ones. There are like many chapters in fiqh. You know, for example, niyyah, al-umur bi maqasidiha. All actions are done by intention. This goes into many details of fiqh. Ad-darar yuzal, like harmfulness is removed. If you have 2 harms, right, which one do you take? The lesser of the 2 harms. If you have like a harm that's gonna, you know, if you removing it will result in a greater harm, you're not supposed to remove that harm. So there's so many different chapters about that. Urf muhakkama, like the custom is considered, right? Say for example in a certain town, the mahar for zawaj, for marriage, is a certain amount, and everybody knows about it. So when a person goes and makes the marriage contract, they don't stipulate the mahar. It's the urf will take over what's stipulated there, right? And then you know the others you can keep going. There's whole books about it, but these are important maxims that make it easy for you to you know kind of like simplify the rulings of fiqh. Barakallahu feek. Jazakallah khair. Yasmin, you have no questions? Really? Alhamdulillah.